Hello and welcome back to the Valencia Property Podcast. As usual, I'm Graham, founder of Valencia Property, and this is the monthly roundup of everything we've been writing, thinking about and doing in and around Valencia. Before we get into it, a word from our sponsor, because each month we have to find a new sponsor, don't we? Can you remember our past sponsors, the Almuerzo or Charter, a few others? Well, this month we're brought to you by Vitamin D. Yes, Vitamin D. The one your doctor keeps telling you you're deficient in, open inverted commas, back home. The one you've been paying for in capsule form for the last 20 years because you don't live in Valencia. Well, I'm pleased to report that Valencia provides it for free. Every single day, almost without fail, and frankly at a level that would make your chemist weep with envy. We're in late May, it was 27 degrees yesterday, endless blue skies and sitting in the shade avoiding getting too much D. You're welcome. Vitamin D, available at no extra cost when you live here. Right, let's get on with the show.
Found my home where east meets sea. Valencia's call.
We're going to start with some market news, and there are two bits of news worth leading with this month. One of them's pretty significant, and that was from the start of June. Property transfer tax on second-hand homes in Valencia dropped from 10% to 9% on the first €1,000,000. Above that it stayed at 11%, but the vast majority of our buyers are not buying above €1,000,000, so this is a real saving for people. On a €400,000 property, that's €4,000 not leaving your pocket and not going to the tax authorities. We saw a shift in completion timing as a result. Next week we've got a lot of sales. A few buyers who were about to sign held on until June. This was sensible as long as the seller agreed and the property didn't go anywhere. And they didn't because we had everything organised. The second piece of news is more nuanced. Supply is ticking upward slightly, finally. Not dramatically, but there is a little more coming onto the market than there was 6 months or a year ago. And the reason appears to be that mortgage approvals in Spain have started to tail off a little, which means that some buyers looking for mortgages who were circling are having to step back a bit. The result is that properties are sitting on the market slightly longer in some areas, which gives buyers a little more breathing room than they've had for the last couple of years. And one thing we're noticing is that prices are starting to drop on the ridiculously optimistic price scale. In other words, the people who put their properties online on Idealista or Pisos.com or whatever, a stupid price, are starting to come down. So we're seeing more price reductions. It doesn't mean that those properties are necessarily good value. Remember, they were overpriced in the first place. They might now be at market value. They might be still above it. It's not a buyer's market yet, and we're a long way from that. But the frenetic pace we've been seeing since we opened up in 2020 after COVID has moderated a bit. And for anyone actively searching, that's not unwelcome, because it might well be that the property you see online is still available when you get here. And that's been the problem for a lot of people. So you get in touch now, let's say the start of June, for example, and you say, oh, I'm only coming over in September. Well, previously there was very little chance of any property you were interested in still being available in September. Well, maybe now it might. We'll see. So what we've been writing about this month, it's been very busy on the blog, so let me run you through the main pieces. The big one was the restaurant conversion story, and some of you will have seen references to our new office in La Pobla de Vallbona and wonder what that was about. So at the end of 2024, in what I can only describe as a moment of optimism bordering on delusion probably, I bought a derelict restaurant in La Pobla with the plan of converting it into a proper base for Valencia Property and stepping stone rentals, an apartment, a gym, a studio for content work. I'm actually recording this in the studio. Straightforward enough in theory, but in practice it took 15 months, 2 sets of refused planning applications, 1 set of windows ordered from Poland that took 6 months to arrive, a visit from the police, at least 1 formal complaint from the neighbours, and a final sign-off that was held up because we hadn't installed an emergency light and a sign saying Salida on the one door in and out of a 58 square metre room. You couldn't make it up. Well, actually you could, but you wouldn't need to because this actually happened. It's finished now though, but it's not an apartment. It's an office to the front and a gym and a studio to the rear. The full story is on the blog, and there's a video that goes with it too over on Substack and YouTube. We show the building as we found it, and we take you through every stage right to the finished space. If you're thinking about buying a commercial property in Valencia and converting it, read this article first. You will be better prepared and possibly slightly less cheerful about the whole idea. But we got there in the end, and I really love the finished space. The office works, the gym works, and we finally have a proper studio to record the podcast in. And eventually we'll get around some videos as well, which is fitting, given you are listening to this from my studio. The other main piece this month was the leisure guide, how to organise your social life in Valencia when you have actually moved here, because great weather and good food only takes you so far in the first few months. After that, you need structure, and structure means activities that give you a reason to show up somewhere on the same day every week or a couple of times a week until the faces become familiar and you stop having introductory conversations and start having proper ones and take those friendships elsewhere too. So you meet up with people outside of the actual activity that you're doing. We covered a lot of ground, from paddle, which is everywhere in Spain and is social by design because you always need 4 people to play. Football using the Timpic app for pickup games in the Turia and also other ones. Park run on Saturday mornings at the Palau de Música, which is free. And the community building happens afterwards over coffee. Outdoor yoga, beach volleyball at the Malvarosa, stand-up paddle boarding from the Marina Real, sailing lessons at the Real Club Náutico, which is still using the infrastructure left over from the America's Cup. And of course a new one, 5-iron golf, which opened in May and which is the first venue of its kind in continental Europe, with 8 Trackman simulators, a bar, an F1 racing simulator, and a league format that gives you a reason to keep coming back. We actually tried this out and we managed to break one of the simulators temporarily on our first visit. I'm not going to say how high the scores went, you'll just have to imagine that, and that's why it broke. There was also paella cooking, flamenco, pottery, bowling, and the Valencia language exchange, which is worth mentioning separately because it serves as an entry point into a lot of the other activities, and the Valencia language exchange has been running events since 2007. They're a community good. This month we also put up a capital gains tax calculator and the budget guide showing you what your money actually buys across different price bands, both in the city and in towns outside it. Both of those are live on the blog and worth bookmarking for future reference or downloading as PDFs. Of course, one thing you've got to realise is that sometimes your budget just isn't enough for what you want, and these articles will show you exactly why. And then we have the 2 most recent posts published last week and this week, of course. The first was our FAQ compilation. So over the years, we've answered the same questions thousands of times. How much are the fees? What's the process? Do I need a lawyer? What's the commission structure? Can I rent it out afterwards? What are the downsides of living here? We've had various FAQ articles scattered across the blog as they came in, and we've now pulled all of them into a single document. Every question we get asked before someone becomes a client, answered honestly in one place. You can read it on the blog or download the PDF. If you've been sitting on the fence because you weren't sure how the whole thing works, this article removes the excuse. And if you have a question that's not in there, of course, send it to us and it'll be in the next version perhaps, if enough people ask it. Finally, we put together an explanation of all the payments involved in a property purchase in Spain. When do you pay a reserve? When do you pay a deposit? Do you pay for a survey? Your lawyer, of course. Most importantly, when you pay us. When you finally pay for your house and when you pay us. All payments, whether obligatory or optional, are explained. And we also look into what are the scams you need to be aware of because, as we've mentioned before on the blog, there are plenty of them around, and if you walk into it innocently, you're going to be a victim. Over on Substack this month, we've done a couple of things which are worth talking about in more detail. The first was the restaurant conversion video. We put the video there first as a companion to the blog article. It showed you the building before and after. It's the same story, but you can actually see it, and I taught you through the stages. If you follow us on Substack, you will have that in your inbox already. If not, subscribe for future posts. You can find the link in the show notes, of course. The second piece was one I'm calling Generations Coming Together, and it came out of a notary signing last week that was one of the more memorable ones I've attended recently. We have 14 people in the room at various points. So we had 3 generations of the same Spanish family and they were selling. The grandmother at 93 was still pretty sharp, her daughter around 60 who was pretty questioning, and the grandson around 30 who was pretty sheepish. He'd done the renovation before the sale through his own building company. The buyer was an American who was asleep in the USA, who had given power of attorney to a lawyer. His partner was there for sending WhatsApp photos in real time to him to see when he woke up. There were 2 selling agents, a gestor, a mortgage broker, Jess from our team who had found the property and done the inspection, and me, largely there for the general chit-chat and to maintain the harmonious relationship with the notary's official, which matters more than people realise. Or at least I like to think it does, it just gives me a reason for existing. The piece explains what all of those people were actually there for and what roles they played, because the mother was asking who everyone was. And it was a fair enough question. She'd sold property in Spain and Germany before and had never seen anything like it. A son actually hadn't told her he'd been using a selling agent. So she was getting slightly selective answers to her questions. I'll leave it there. It's a family matter, not ours, and I'm sure they sorted it out later. It's a good piece for anyone who's never been to a Spanish notary signing and is wondering what to expect. The short answer is more people than you think. On to stepping stone rentals and 2 things from the SSR side this month. First, we're heading into the busiest period of the year for medium-term furnished lets. There aren't many available. If you're relocating to Valencia and you need a base while you search for a property to buy or while you wait for purchase to complete, we have furnished flats available in the city. Stepping Stones Rentals is set up for stays of 3 to 6 months, properly furnished for real living, not tourist pricing for a place you're making breakfast in every morning. Secondly, Isabella has written a piece on the SSR blog this month about pets, and it's worth a look even if you don't have a pet, because the numbers are interesting. Around 60% of the inquiries we receive on SSR mention animals. Dogs mostly, but there's a few cats too. They're definitely showing up more recently, bringing their human families with them. However, fewer than 10% of rental listings in Spain openly allow pets. More will, but openly actually saying pets welcome, it's fewer than 10%. That's a straightforward market gap and maybe a biz opportunity if you have a property for pets. Out of around 35 to 40 stepping stone rental properties at the moment, about 4 are consistently pet friendly. And those 4, funnily enough, are the ones that are booked first and stay booked. Our White River apartment, which is pet friendly, is already fully reserved through to January 2027. The evidence from our own portfolio is pretty clear. If you open the door to pets, you reduce vacancies and attract tenants who tend to stay longer and plan further ahead, because they know how hard pet-friendly accommodation is to find. The piece also covers how we manage it practically: additional deposits, higher cleaning fees, clear house rules, mid-stay cleans, etc. Pet owners relocating internationally tend to be exceptionally respectful tenants, precisely because they understand what a find a pet-friendly flat is, and they don't want to ruin it for others. If you are an owner with an SSR property and you've been on the fence about this, the article's worth reading. Also, if you're an owner and you've got a flat where you will accept pets, let us know, we've got demand for it. If you've been on the fence about this, it's worth reading, of course, but the link is on the SSR blog and it's in the show description, of course. Take a look at it and then get in touch with us, and please offer us your properties where you will allow pets, because we're struggling, we really are. We've got too much demand.
Where the paella sings and the church bells harmonize.
And finally for today, a thought on timing. I'll leave you with something to think about. People often ask me, when is the right time to buy? And I want to give you an honest answer rather than a sales pitch. The market didn't go up every year from our origin story in 1999. After 2008, it fell, and it fell hard, around 60% from peak over roughly 5 years. And it was a brutal correction, and a lot of people were hurt by it, myself included. We're above those 2008 peak prices now, but not by a huge margin. Especially when for many of those years we've been living in an inflationary environment, meaning general prices are now around 50% higher than in 2008. And even higher for some goods. I'm looking at you, chocolate, coffee and olive oil. Have you noticed how expensive those 3 things have got recently? This should tell you something about where we are in the cycle. But one thing it definitely does is it focuses the mind. This isn't a market in bubble territory, even if it slows down a bit. And it will be slowing down a bit if what we talked about before about not getting mortgages in the Spanish market is true. It'll slow down a bit. It's a market that's recovered from a serious crash of 2008, grown steadily from a low base, because once we dropped 60%, that was a really low base. And it's attracting significant international investment precisely because the fundamentals are solid and the lifestyle in Valencia and Spain as a whole is pretty unbeatable. If you are waiting for prices to fall sharply before you move, you're essentially waiting for a peak of 2008. And the conditions that cause that are not present here right now, one of the most important being very high interest rates. Let me just say, we signed a mortgage this week for someone at 2.25% fixed over 20 years. We can't ever discount a huge black swan event, especially with that maniac over there. Yes, you know who I'm talking about. And remember, from the 1st of June, you also save 1% in transfer tax, which will create a glut of signings this month. Supply is very slightly better than it was, and the sun, as always, is doing its job, along with our sponsor today, Vitamin D. Don't forget that. We get lots of mentions of our sponsoring during the thing. If you want to sponsor us, remember, you've got to be a bit niche. But that's it for this month. Everything we've mentioned is on the blog at valenciaproperty.com, on the SSR blog at steppingsstonerentals.com, and on Substack at valenciaproperty.substack.com. If you want to talk to us about buying, selling, or renting in Valencia, or if you want to allow pets into your property, just get in touch. Message me on information@valencia-property.com and we can talk. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next month.